these are nice people. Send them a card, you can trust them. So when they're 9 and 10 and they get approached by the nice migrant down the road who then sexually assaults them, they might do that because they're more trusting. There is no...
But guys, and we're also sending the message to migrants inherently who don't often have an understanding of consent and the way that we choose to treat children and women in this country.
That was
this is something.
Guys, if we're going to paint to that...
5-year-olds forced to scribble love hearts to grown male migrants whose abuse cases are spiking. Is this compassion or grooming by the woke state? Watch before it asks memory hold.
Children in Africa, not 40-year-old men that are living in this country potentially down the road from these children whose schools they are visiting. Come on, Kai, this is nonsense.
But Renee was saying that we shouldn't be educating primary school children about the horrors that happen across the world. Well, that's what we were doing. We were learning that we're quite lucky in this country, that we live in a democracy, we live in quite a safe community, and that we're welcoming of people from all across the world who want to make a living in.
I
think that's a good trait.
Oh, it's a hard one, guys, because I don't actually know the details inside, but I am a bit inclined to agree with Kai. I think there's nothing... You've got to think, right, a lot of the migrants that come over, a lot of them who are actual refugees, and ones that are granted refugee, people like my wife, they do deserve the kind of love, the care, the understanding. There's nothing wrong with that. Some of them are coming from absolutely horrific parts of the world. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. You know, I can't disagree with that.
Talk about the 5-year-olds, mate. That's not the story. We're talking about the fact that 5-year-olds are sending letters to economic...
But that's the thing. No. From that point of view, because I don't know enough about this story. From that point of view...
We've just talked about...
Yeah, no, but is it Valentine's Day or is it some sort of welcoming stuff?
That's
very different.
It's irrelevant.
If it's Valentine's...
It's a great deal.
If it's Valentine's, absolutely not. It's indefensible, right? But if it's some sort of welcoming to people who generally have been through horror, I mean, it won't just be men, it'll be women, it'll be children, it'll be lots of people, I imagine, just generally migrants. There's nothing wrong with that. If it's just to men, of course, that's going to be an issue.
There's no place in our 5-year-olds' education to even worry them about this kind of nonsense.
When we were kids, like you said about Africa, we used to worry about people in Ethiopia that were starving. We would worry about people in war-torn countries. We would worry about a ton of people around the world. Isn't that the right kind of values to be sending to people, to have some level of compassion for people?
Can we also just stop lying to the audience? We now know that somewhere between 80 to 90% of the people who are coming into this country are not coming as genuine refugees. We know this now. It is beyond debate. Stop misframing the argument.
Yeah, can I just say my big worry with this, and this is what sparked national protests this weekend, is that parents are concerned about the safety of women and of children in this country. And I think the look that this gives, I mean, you can make the argument that it's a nice thing to do. We should be welcoming to genuine refugees. If they are genuine, I agree with you, and many people would agree. But we do know that, I mean, I strongly believe 8 out of, even 9 out of 10 of them are not genuine refugees. And also we know there is a danger to children, there is a danger to women. And I think, fairly, that is concerning hundreds, thousands of people up and down this country. And then to see that kids are being at school told to write heart-shaped cards, like Valentine's Day cards, to grown men is wrong.
Alex,
it's a wrong thing to do.
What you're doing is you're highlighting something else. We're now saying to these young children, these are nice people. Send them a card, you can trust them. So when they're 9 and 10 and they get approached by the nice migrant down the road who then sexually assaults them, they might do that because they're more trusting. There is no...
But guys,
we're also sending the message to migrants inherently who don't often have an understanding of consent and the way that we choose to treat children and women in this country.
That was my other concern.
This is something...
Guys, if we're going to paint it that way, there's no way I'm going to defend that. You know that. But there seems to be this picture of painting just migrants. Because if that's the case, would we not then extend that same concern to, you know, members of the clergy, for instance, who are found to be doing
I do not.
Is the outrage only when the perpetrator is a migrant? Or is it a genuine... There's lots of homegrown people.
It's not, but we also haven't seen any stories of kids writing...
No, but it's true, though. It does seem something like...
I just think on this matter, I think the point is this. First of all, we are seeing ridiculous cases go through our court system where people are getting off, being deported for the most ridiculous statements. And one of them, I think, will happen is if a migrant has received a love letter from a child and then, you know, hypothetically does something to that child which is so sick I won't even mention it on TV, then that is a defence for them, right? And even one excuse is one too many.
Yeah. And try to answer your question.
I'm not political temperature is just not right for us.
100%. You guys know, I'm a recent father. One sec, Will.
Yeah.
I will not condone that in the way that you say. Absolutely not.
Yeah,
I'm sure you won't either. Not in the way that's been said.
But I think that's
but if it's been done in a sense of welcoming people who've come from hardship, fine, that's okay.
I think the difficulty is, because we've got to wrap this up, the difficulty is how do you distinguish that? And we can't distinguish that. And when we see what we're seeing at the moment, it's very hard for even a single one of these to be justified, in my opinion. But anyway, look, I want to read out what Birmingham City Council has said. They have stressed that the scheme was a national one launched by a charity city sanctuary network and was independent of local authorities. The spokesman said, schools apply independently to become schools of sanctuary. In a diverse, welcoming and inclusive city like Birmingham, it comes as no surprise that several schools across the city have signed up independently to be a school of sanctuary. Cities of Sanctuary UK, which operates the network, said that they are not directly involved in the delivery of activities in schools, but they understand that the welcome card activity reference involved children writing anonymised letters to welcome people of seeking safety in their communities. They added, we are confident that teachers adopt rigorous safeguarding approaches when undertaking any activity in school in line with their responsibilities to ensure every child is safe.
Cop out.
I'm going to cut straight to the point. A 5-year-old child has no business being dragooned into writing heart-shaped cards to grown men who have crossed the channel in small boats without papers. That is not kindness, that is grooming by another name. The Schools of Sanctuary Network, the Birmingham Labour Council, and every head teacher who signs up to this scheme are playing with fire, and they know it. Let me lay out the facts they refuse to face. First, the age profile of the men arriving in small boats is overwhelmingly 18 to 40. The Home Office's own quarterly snapshot, quietly slipped out last December, shows that 87% of boat arrivals in 2023 were adult males. So when a primary school lines up its reception class to scribble "Be My Valentine" to anonymous strangers, those strangers are not toddlers fleeing bombs, they are fit young men who have paid people smugglers to jump the queue. To pretend otherwise is a lie. Second, the safeguarding angle is not theoretical. In Rochdale, Telford, Rotherham, Oxford, Newcastle, and now in Glasgow, the pattern repeats. Vulnerable local girls, many still in primary school, are befriended by older men who arrive as unaccompanied minors, yet turn out to be 20-something. The J report on Rotherham alone lists over 1,400 victims. In every case, the grooming started with the same trick, gaining the child's trust through small gifts and friendly notes. A heart-shaped card is not harmless when it is the first step in normalizing contact between a child and an adult who should not be anywhere near her. Third, the law is being bent until it snaps. The City of Sanctuary website brags that its model is rooted in human rights. Whose rights? Not the child's right to protection under the Children Act 1989, which places a duty on every teacher to safeguard pupils from harm. Not the parent's right under Section 405 of the Education Act 1996 to withdraw a child from any lesson that undermines their religious or moral convictions. Instead, the scheme hides behind the 1951 Refugee Convention, a treaty drafted when the word refugee meant Europeans fleeing Stalin, not economic migrants flying into Istanbul on a tourist visa and then paying smugglers to land them on a Kent beach. The left loves to claim that anyone who objects is far right, yet the loudest warnings are coming from immigrant families themselves. In Leeds, the Sikh community marched last year after 2 Sikh girls were targeted by grooming gangs. In Tower Hamlets, Bangladeshi mothers pulled their daughters out of school when they found similar cards being handed out. These parents came here to escape the chaos of the third world. They do not want Birmingham Council recreating it in year 1. And let us talk about the curriculum time being burned on this stunt. A child in England has 190 school days a year. By the time he reaches 11, he has had fewer than 7,000 hours of classroom instruction. Every hour spent making welcome cards is an hour not spent on phonics, times tables, or British history. We have just fallen again in the OECD league tables for literacy and numeracy. Instead of revering that decline, Labour councils are turning schools into NGO branch offices. The funding trail tells its own story. The Schools of Sanctuary Award is not just a certificate on the wall, it unlocks grants from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and from the EU's Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund. In plain English, head teachers are paid to push the open borders agenda. The more sanctuary activities they log, the more money they draw down. Children are being monetized. Meanwhile, the Home Office is barred from asking basic questions. When a man arrives with no passport and claims to be 16, border force must treat the claim as gospel. Dental age tests that show he is closer to 25 are ignored because the Royal College of Pediatrics fears stigmatization. The result is that secondary schools are forced to seat fully bearded men in blazers and ties next to 14-year-old girls. A head teacher in Luton told me off the record that 3 of his Year 11 students are older than he is. That is the system the sanctuary lobby is protecting. I am sick of being told that opposition to this madness is anti-refugee. My own grandparents were refugees. They fled Egypt in the 1950s with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They did not ask for hearts and flowers, they asked for the rule of law. They learned English, opened businesses, paid taxes, and flew the Union Jack on every national day. They would be horrified to see classrooms where the Union Jack is banned as colonial, yet the Palestinian flag is handed out like confetti. The real agenda here is cultural replacement. The left cannot win elections on its economic record. Labor lost the working class vote in every red wall seat, so it is importing a new electorate and indoctrinating the next generation to applaud its own displacement. That is why every objection is smeared as racist. If they cared about racism, they would condemn the Rochdale rapists instead of branding the victims white trash. Here is what I want to happen next. Every parent should email their child's school and demand to see the safeguarding risk assessment for any activity involving migrants. If the school refuses, invoke Section 29 of the Education Act and demand a copy of the governor's minutes. Any governor who cannot produce a risk assessment that meets the statutory guidance keeping children safe in education should be referred to the local authority designated officer for child protection. That is not activism, that is basic parental duty. Second, write to your MP and demand the immediate closure of the Schools of Sanctuary program. The scheme is not statutory, it is an opt-in badge handed out by a pressure group. Parliament can defund it tomorrow. If enough constituents complain, MPs will act. They always do when their seats are on the line. Third, support the private member's bill now being drafted by Miriam Cates and Danny Kruger that would make it a criminal offense for any adult who has entered the country illegally to approach a child within 500 meters of a school gate. The left will scream that it violates human rights. Let them explain that to the mothers of Rotherham. Finally, teach your children the facts. Buy an age-appropriate book on British history and read it with them. Explain that Britain has always offered refuge, but only to those who come legally and respect our laws. A refugee does not demand that we change our culture, he changes his own future by embracing ours. The time for polite silence is over. If we do not stop this now, the next headline will not be about Valentine cards. It will be about a missing child. And by then, the activists will blame systemic racism, not their own reckless ideology. I will not let that happen on my watch, and neither should you.